Right. Welcome to the Music Reel. I'm Nicola Burton, your host. Today I have Katie Edmiston from the Creative Arts Alliance. Katie, it is a pleasure to talk to you today. How are you going?
Yeah, going okay. Managing like everybody else, and
Good
I
to
feel
hear.
like I'm getting good at juggling and hustling constantly at the moment.
That's what we do. That's the whole arts. It's being creative in times of great challenge, isn't it?
Indeed.
Now, look, the Creative Arts Alliance, I just want to introduce it a little bit. It's a leading arts industry body. Now, you strengthen the creative and the cultural centres across regional Queensland, and you do that in partnership with 6 councils. So, Gympie, Noosa, Sunshine Coast, Moreton Bay, Redlands, and Somerset, those
That's
6.
correct. Yeah, that's our little patch.
That's an incredible amount of work that you do. And also, what I wanted to say to you was thank you for what you did in lockdown. You put together this most concise and comprehensive resource list so that when everything was going crazy, people could go to your website and they could see funding application opportunities and professional development. It was brilliant. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it was hard to know. I mean, I think I'm a bit of a doer. And I like to pride myself on, I think anyone who's worked in festivals or events or anything like that, I think we're quite good in a crisis, but I'm also quite somebody that goes, okay, this is the issue we need to solve, let's get it done. And so I think that I just felt so helpless to be able to do anything real to affect, the massive kind of impact that was being had by not only our artists but communities more broadly. And all I could think, but what I kept seeing was just all of these opportunities and kind of information and conflicting information. I was like, there was so much content coming out, and I just needed to try and make sense of it for myself firstly, and then when actually there's a need for someone to do this, no one is doing that. So yeah, it has been a journey keeping that list updated, but it's such a simple thing to do, but we have received some really great feedback, so thank you for that.
Well, look, it's been, I think, such a great, I was going there every day. What else is available? Because I think it helped people. They had a bit of a focus. I gave them a bit of a purpose. It was quite a confusing time. So that's kudos to you guys. And the second thing, how did lockdown actually impact the projects that you were trying to deliver? What happened with you guys?
Yeah, it really did. I mean, we are a really small organisation, so for the majority of lockdown, I've actually been the only full-time employee of our org. We have some part-time staff that had been with us and then had finished up by their own choice, not anything to do with COVID, but to move on to something else. And then we had to kind of recruit someone new during COVID period. So it's been a time. But I guess our main concern, or my main concern, was that we had a whole range of projects that were due to occur that just could not go ahead because of COVID. So events, festivals were meant to deliver, mentorship programs that were meant to happen in throughout the whole year. And essentially, because all of those artists or creative facilitators were contractors to us, they would, it meant that all of them would lose work. None of them would be eligible under JobKeeper. With us anyway. And so we moved very quickly to try and salvage and refocus our programs. And there is a blessing and a curse with being a tiny organisation and the ability just to be, ultimately I just went, okay, well, that's what we're doing. So, whereas I know for others, it can take time. If there's a whole bunch of people trying to shift the focus, can be more difficult. I was really fortunate to have some great council partners who have been really very flexible with what we had said we were going to deliver and what they've allowed us to deliver instead. And that's meant that we've saved about 80 to 90% of the contracts we had in place for artists in our region.
Well done, because that's no easy feat.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that. And it's hard. Sometimes it feels like it's not enough because they are still small, funds, in some cases it might be a couple of $1,000s or $5,000, for a project. But I certainly know, as someone who has worked in the industry myself as an independent practitioner up until I took this role on a year and a half ago, that those chunks of money are actually crucial. And that so many people were losing jobs at that point, and we didn't want to add to that. And secondly, for us, I think we have an obligation not only to our artists but to our communities that we had said we were going to deliver these types of activities, and had built this, been working so hard to build those connections with local people and places, that if we just kind of stopped, that those connections, I feared those connections would be severed. And so we wanted to keep providing some kind of engagement, some kind of access to the arts and culture, some kind of access to our artists, so that people could continue to have a connection with us and with their practice and with their communities during the time.
This is what I love about the story, is that there's so many men and women behind the scenes that no one knows about. And it's like it takes a whole village of people like you that create these events to happen in the first place, create these opportunities. That's why I'm just loving talking to people like you and hearing these stories, because I think the more people understand the mechanism behind the whole structure, then they can appreciate what it actually takes to get a show out there. I wanted to talk to you about funding, because obviously, you know, there's been a lot of money lost. So what Q Music estimated, I think it was $325 million initially lost in April. I'd say it's a hell of a lot more than that. And so most of the artists that we work with, they fund themselves. If they are doing their original project, they go and they'll do some cover shows in order to fund it. They have no idea about how to apply for a grant. So this is a completely new beast for them. So what tips would you have for artists that have never applied for funding before? What are the key things they should actually prepare for in that respect?
I think there's a few things for me. One is be concise. Actually, you're better to provide a small project or a stage of a project rather than giving people the whole story, you know. So you can kind of tell people the story, but I always think, particularly if you're untested in some ways, or you haven't had funding before, or if this is a new type of thing that you're doing, I certainly think just, you know, give them a really good application for something that's very clear.
Okay.
So that's part one. I would also think about it like, I always think it's like writing it. You can write in dot points. That's the other thing. So as someone who's worked, like, you don't have to write in an essay form. So as someone who has assessed grants and run funding programs and also written a bunch of grants, use the dot points, have your headings, who, what, where, when, why. Like, really just think about it in a basic way. And actually, as long as you've communicated those things in a succinct way and a clear way, you know, then that actually is helpful. I would say take note of what you're saying you're going to do. So make it achievable. There's a lot of great ideas, and I think sometimes we as artists and creatives, mate, I've had some really great ideas, but they were not viable in any way, shape or form.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, think about what is actually achievable in the timeframes and the money that you've asked for. And it's okay to pay yourself, and you should be paying yourself. Don't, you know, give away a whole bunch of time for free or suggest that you can do something for nothing, because that actually indicates that you don't have a sense of the true value of the project and makes your project seem less viable in terms of its ability to succeed.
Right, that's really good advice. So can you talk to me about the so the project you're working on at the moment? So what, it's Club Create, RPAC Live, and then
so many.
And then you've got like a music mentorship. Because look, artists don't know about these opportunities, so I'd really love you to talk about that and tell them what it's about and then how they can possibly get involved.
Absolutely. So we really are very responsive to the needs of the councils and communities that we work in, and so that's why when you look at our program, it can look a little bit all over the place. From you know, product development, work with producing cultural tourism products with visual artists at the Sunshine Coast, through to children's holiday workshops at the Caboolture, right? So it's very diverse. But we have a number of key priorities, I suppose, that we work across in our region. First Nations arts and culture has been a very strong regional priority for us, and we have a number of key programs that have worked to assist and work with and also support First Nations artists to lead their own projects and activities with our support. Music has been a major priority across the region, and as you've mentioned, we've got a couple of current initiatives open at the moment for artists to be involved in. The first is artists and musicians or bands from Redlands. We're doing a great project with the Redlands performing arts centre called RPAC Live, which is really about starting to reactivate that centre and bringing live music back to the stage. The first couple of gigs will be live streamed, but we're hoping as restrictions ease, that council is keen to, fingers crossed, thanks Victoria, council is keen to bring small numbers of audiences into the building as well. So we might kind of do some interesting combinations of people sitting in very social distance ways and live streaming also. So there's an opportunity for bands and musicians from the Redlands area to apply currently as part of that program. The second music program we've got running currently is Plug-in, which is our mentorship program. Now, previously we've run that in person, and with COVID, we really wanted to consider how to do that in a different way. And what's been kind of interesting about that is that normally we've run that program just in one place. And so with anything, there's a bit of a blessing and a curse. Moving things online has meant that we can now offer this as a region-wide program for emerging musicians up to 25 years old. And so it means that we can support a much wider region of musicians and really kind of find those artists who are ready to kind of move to that next level in their practice. I'm really excited about Plug-in. I think it's it's a really exciting model, and essentially the young artists get access to small group industry workshops. We've got some fantastic speakers coming on board, festivals, venues, producers, major peak bodies coming to have small group sessions with our artists to give them direct feedback about their how to get the gig, specific feedback on writing their own bio and actually working with them to do that, and their press kit. And then we've got mentorships with creative musicians and those kind of as part of songwriting, lyric writing, vocal training, instrument development, and stagecraft and performance. So young people will go through a series of mentors tailored to them. So we're really looking to match, if you're a hip hop artist, you get to work with a hip hop artist. If you're a folk artist, you get to work with a folk artist. So we're bringing together a range of mentors from across the entire region who are working as professional musicians and who will be supporting aspiring and emerging musicians in that kind of younger cohort through this process.
So it would be fair to say that there are some opportunities that we now have as a result of the lockdowns, because if you can continue to do run digital mentorships, like you say, it actually expands your capacity. That's beautiful.
And I think there's something interesting too about the as a young person, or even just as a regional artist, I think it can be hard. Many of us are working in multiple projects. There's not a lot of full-time work. People are, as you were saying, gigging, doing multiple kind of things. And you kind of often have a sense of who your sector is at a local level. But as an independent artist, it's very difficult to start building your network into the town over the town over the town over. And so what is kind of interesting about this digital model, which we hadn't which we can now offer in a different way, is that we're starting to build a network for those emerging practitioners with artists, so professional artists and industry, and also other peers across that broader Southeast Queensland network. And that's exciting for me, because when we kind of get to a stage where we're talking about touring again, all of a sudden those young artists have an opportunity to say, hey, actually, I met that venue person in Gympie, and I can, when I'm heading up for a gig at the coast, maybe I can also have a chat with them about that. Or actually, I'm heading down to Redlands. I live at the Sunshine Coast. I'm heading down to Redlands for a gig. Oh, there was that band down at Redlands that I did work with. Perhaps they'd like to play with us. Perhaps they can be our our intro band. So I think there is an opportunity to build the network around our musicians through this project, which maybe we wouldn't have been able to realise as well previously.
So you're building local community pods that can leverage a variety of projects. Very intelligent.
Yeah,
I love it.
So and you mentioned Club Create. I don't know if I've got time to give that a little plug.
I really want to hear about that. That one I thought was quite good. Tell me all about it.
Yeah. So look, it's a similar model, I suppose, to Plug-in, but focused for visual artists in that kind of emerging age group. And so again, visual artists attend a series of small group industry workshops. So we've got curators, galleries, collections officers, public arts programmers coming to kind of give advice about careers, or how you get into this space, or how you work with it. What does it mean to be a curator? Because I think often as young people, we know we have a sense of the arts. I myself was a performer, and I was like, oh, I knew that was the thing that I kind of knew how to do. I didn't know there were jobs like the one I have, or jobs I've had where you were paid to curate or program or produce. Like, I didn't know that was a thing, right? And so I think by creating this, and actually I think, although I'm like probably was a fairly decent performer, I also think I'm much better at this bit of doing that, pulling people together and making the stuff happen. And I love that work. And I imagine that there are a whole bunch of other young people, you know, we really want to grow careers, not only as artists, but careers in the arts as industry leaders. So I think this program also supports that aspect. So we have, you know, them talking about that kind of career pathways in various other parts of the arts. And then similarly to plug in, they then have a series of workshops with key visual arts practitioners who are teaching them and sharing skills around a range of activities. So they're going to do printmaking and portraits and what's some of the other cool ones? I can't even remember. Like a community arts type project, and cyanotype, which is this awesome thing where you create a print basically using the sun and the weird ink. I can't figure it out anyway. People are way smarter than me. And then they'll have an exhibition at the end of that process. So, yeah, so really looking forward to that project. And that one specifically at this stage is just for Moreton Bay young people, and is being supported through the Moreton Bay Council, who have been a fantastic partner and collaborator on a range of projects that we're doing.
It actually gives us great optimism for the future of this industry, doesn't it? And I like what you said, how you're a performer, but you've leveraged and transferred your skills as a creative into working behind the scenes, because you know, as a performer, everything that can go wrong can go wrong. Yeah. So that equips you in a way to deal with a behind the scenes gig more than anyone else.
Yeah, well, I often say to my partner, I'm not sure that my 3-year acting degree was very useful. And she's like, everything you do is a show, you know, like everything.
Exactly.
Like the way you tell the story, you're bringing people on board, you know, the way you communicate. She was like, it's all part of it. And so, you know, I think that's true too. We've got skills we don't even know that we have sometimes, I think.
And they're completely transferable to other industries. At a time when our industries are looking like a bit shaky, you know that if you have experience in arts, creative and music industries, you can pretty much do anything.
Well, absolutely. And in fact, a few years ago, I was teaching at QUT, and there was a whole bunch of research coming out about companies looking for people with arts degrees as part of a kind of suite of things that they were doing, because creative thinking and creative thinkers are actually what is required. People do want that initiative that artists have, that ability to see a problem and try to come up with something, a solution, or the way in which we kind of view the world in different ways, I think. And I would suggest that many artists have that capacity within them. And that's a skill I think that we undersell sometimes about ourselves in other types of work that we might do.
Absolutely. And as we emerge into this more of a technologically focused society, when technology goes wrong, you can only survive if you have that incredibly creative, out-of-the-box type thinking. So we're certainly moving into a very different time post-COVID, and I feel like our art sector is in good hands with the work that you're doing with Creative Arts Alliance. So, Katie, thank you so much for talking to me and for adding your voice to this conversation. It's so important to hear about these initiatives. And anyone out there who wants to know more, I'll have all of the links to all of these programs so you can contact Katie and get involved. Particularly, I think, Plug In. That sounds like a really good one. So, Katie, thanks for your time today. It was great to meet you, and I hope we can catch up again soon.
I love that. Thank you so much for having us and supporting our programs.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Katie.